Hey, what's up everybody? Joshua Casper back at you with Plugin Boutique, and I've got an extra special, super cool tutorial today, and it's actually from someone's video I saw, so I can't take full credit for this. I saw a video on this subject on a channel called 41 Fingers, and I'm going to leave a link to that original video in the description, but it's honestly just too cool not to share with you on this channel. What we're going to be doing is using reMIDI 2 and Scalar to create some incredible melodies. And along the way, we'll learn a little bit about both of them and a little bit about how to tweak them out and get some really incredible performances. So the first thing to do is just go ahead and get set up. So I'm going to delete everything and just start from scratch. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is put reMIDI on a channel. reMIDI takes MIDI performances and remixes them, and you can essentially sample the MIDI performances like you would sample a record and then play it back on your drum pads. So instead of playing a recorded sound here, we're just going to be triggering MIDI, which we can then use to drive any sort of instrument that we want. It's a really, really unique plugin. They've just released the second version with a lot more features. I did do a more in-depth video tutorial on the first version, so if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link to that in the video description as well. But essentially, we have a library of music that's in the public domain that has been transposed into just MIDI performances. So here I have Bach, and if I press a key on my keyboard, it's going to loop that part of the track. And we have control over the size and the tempo and so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and bring the tempo down to 0.25 and turn the size down to 1. So what I'm doing there is just playing the keys on my keyboard. So you'll see inside of Ableton Live here, I've just got some random notes. And if I play that sequence, and if I move these anywhere, we're going to get a different performance. So it depends on what you're trying to do. But let's just say I like that one, right? Next thing I'm going to do is add an instance of Scalar. And this is where things start to get really interesting. Okay, I've been Scalar here. I'm going to be using Scalar 2. I'm just going to drop it on its own MIDI channel. And what we want to do is have that MIDI performance from reMIDI 2 pumped into Scalar. So to do that, over here in Ableton Live, I'm going to take reMIDI 2, set it to in. And if I play this from the beginning, I can turn off the audio output from reMIDI. And you'll hear that I'm getting that performance from the felt piano. I'm actually going to change that to grand so we can hear it a little bit better. Great. But now things get really, really cool. And that's because I can turn on key lock. And there are a couple of different ways we can do this. So I'm going to leave it on notes mapped for a second. And I'm going to come in here to scales. And I'm going to choose G and minor. And with key lock off, I'm just going to get the normal performance. With key lock on, I'm actually going to transpose any income MIDI into the scale that I've chosen, in this case, G minor. Okay, and the difference between these two, right? Notes mapped. If there is an incorrect note coming into Scalar, Scalar will move that to a correct note, the nearest correct note that there is. And if you choose notes only, if there's an incorrect note, it will just be muted. It won't be moved or anything. So those are two different options. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on this first one for now. But what we can do now is actually make a chord progression. So I'm going to take G minor, D minor, C minor, back down to G. And if I right click the play button, now I'm going to get these chords and that MIDI performance from reMIDI 2. Okay, so if you're like me, your mind is already racing with the possibilities here. Scalar 2 introduced the performance tab here where we could have all of these different melodies and so forth. But this is actually just taking that concept and really opening it up, and it's being driven by reMIDI 2, which is just absolutely insane. Okay. We can come in and change the key if we wanted to. Let's do something like a Lydian. Once I change the key, though, I'm going to have to redo my chord progression. And I was just doing a simple 1-5-4-1. So 1-5-4-1. And we still have all of the great features of Scalar to further make this performance better. So I can turn on voice grouping. All right, I can turn on humanizing. Let's humanize both timing and velocity. But what we can do now is actually send that MIDI into a different instrument. So let's go ahead and set up Contact here. And I'm going to send that MIDI into the Contact player because I have a great piano library from Heaviosity that I want to use here. But don't forget, you can use anything. You can use a synthesizer. You can use strings for this. You can really get creative once you have an understanding of how to do this. So now what we want to do in Contact 3 is go from Scalar 2 again, and then in, and now the MIDI from Scalar is going to get fed into Contact. So the MIDI is getting fed from reMIDI into Scalar. Scalar's manipulating that MIDI to push it into the scale we've chosen, plus adding that chord progression, and then all of that MIDI data is getting sent into Contact at this point. It sounds complicated, but it's not, or maybe it is, I don't know. It's absolutely phenomenal, so that's all that really matters in the end. All right, so now that I got my preset loaded here in the Send Modern Grand, let's see what it sounds like. And again, I could come in here to Scalar and turn off the audio there. I'm really only concerned about the audio coming out of the Contact player at this point. Is that not incredible? But let's not stop there. Let's add another instrument and get things going even more. Here I have Vento, again from Heaviosity. And if I come in here where it says A2 and turn it to A1, now both of these instruments will be triggered by that same MIDI. If you don't see that, you'll probably see this. Just click that I button right here and you'll be able to change that. And you can see where I'm going with this. We can really get creative here. And of course, we can always record that MIDI and tweak things out even more. But let's go ahead and close this and actually come into reMIDI. And I'll bring up Scalar 2 as well. And we can really we can do so much now in terms of experimentation. We can change the size. Even just hitting that one button, we've got a completely different feel, but it still sounds absolutely phenomenal. Is this not blowing your mind? Let's check out a few other performances. And remember, everything is going to be completely synced up in terms of the key of our track. I'm just going to be loading new MIDI, and it's all going to get pushed into the right scale by Scalar, so I don't need to worry about really anything at this point besides just stumbling upon the coolest one. This is just so cool. Let's just check out another one. Right now I'm in the Baroque one, but we can easily come into the factory MIDI, and there are a ton of MIDI performances in here. So, and remember, these are all from the public domain, so even if it does sound similar to the original MIDI performance, you don't need to worry about anything in terms of copyright because everything inside of this library is cleared and in the public domain. So boom goes the dynamite. Let's come into Romantic and see if we can't find something. Are you kidding me? Let's transpose it up an octave and see what that sounds like. It's just nonstop good ideas. I'm gonna pretty much wrap it up at this point. Oh my God. Literally, I have none of this planned. I'm just randomly loading something, and listen, it's going to sound good every time. You might have to adjust things like the size, the tempo, and the transposition here, but you'll be able to find a sweet spot. And once you have that idea and that inspiration hits you, you can just run with it from there. It's an absolutely incredible method of getting inspiration. It's just an insane amount of what you can do with these two plugins combined. And remember, we can always extract the MIDI, record the MIDI, manipulate the MIDI later. We can make it longer. You know, I've just been switching up right here, but if maybe we can come into this MIDI patch and just move these around, and then we're going to get something completely different than we had before. Let me just do it. You know, let's just move it like this. That's just so good. So I just want to say thanks again to 41 Fingers for sharing that video on YouTube. When I found it, I was blown away, and I needed to share with our community. So if you already have Scalar 2, I highly suggest checking out reMIDI 2, because it's just going to expand the possibilities. When they're combined, it's like Voltron. I swear to you, it's just so good. I mean, I've just shown you here completely randomly choosing stuff, and it sounds phenomenal each and every time. So anyway, as usual, I'm Joshua Casper here for Plugin Boutique. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.